The Plympton Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Plympton Podcast, looking at delays to the implementation of what is known as the Eastern Corridor Road Improvements Scheme. This is a series of upgrades to Plymouth Road and some of its junctions, from Marsh Mills through to Glen Road, and also changes to the layout at the top of Cott Hill. Notices went up earlier in the year, publicising a start date to the scheme of spring 2018, but by the late summer there was still no sign of any meaningful start occurring. As a result, what is known as a motional notice was placed before the full meeting of Plymouth City Council on the 17th of September, calling for the work to start forthwith. The motion was proposed by Plympton St Mary Ward Councillor Patrick Nicholson, who opened the debate.
Members, I'm very pleased to move the motion that will be seconded by Councillor Beers set out on agenda item 12D. The reason for raising this particular motion today is because, as I'm sure as Councillor Coke will confirm, delivery of transport schemes is quite a frustrating task. But this scheme has been now in initiation for 4 years. Councillor Coker, when he was previously in post, signed a project mandate on the 14th of June 2014. So certainly in the last couple of years, this scheme has progressed through 2 rounds of consultation, and the finance has been put in place through the Local Enterprise Partnership government grant of 2.1 million and Section 106 contributions from development. When, unfortunately, the Conservatives left office in May, this scheme was pretty much at a stage where it could be implemented, and I'm sure we'll have this debate, but I can rest assured the money was signed off. The detailed design on some of the aspects of the scheme were implementable, and the major design work at Cott Hill was still ongoing, but that was being finalised. And the route to delivery was to implement the upgrade of traffic lights that only needed an upgrade to the mover system along Plymouth Road. The design works that were anticipated at Larkham Lane, Plymouth Road, Cott Hill, Merrifield Road needed to be completed, but in effect the scheme was deliverable. And it actually did start in the end of the last financial year as you come over Colbrook by the railway, where effectively the directional sign of traffic changed to give priority to those cars coming off Glen Road. This scheme is essential for the economic growth of the Eastern Corridor. Transport schemes should not be taking as long as they are to implement. So it is imperative that all councillors, whether they're Labour or Conservative, where government grant has been given, that we spend it as efficiently as possible. So I am somewhat surprised that it appears that the Cabinet Member for Finance wanted to review the entire capital programme, because there are elements of the capital programme, particularly on strategic highway infrastructure, where there are long-standing priorities. They cross party political grounds because we established that there's a need in this city for major inward infrastructure to the highway, and they should be progressed as quickly as possible. Now, 4 years on, we've actually stopped because we had started to implement minor aspects of the scheme, and that should have progressed in the summer. Signs went up under my when I had responsibility that there was going to be a summer implementation start date, and that effectively did start. And I think the public want to know now, Lord Mayor, why there hasn't been a steady progress of the implementation of that scheme. Councillor Maven Smiles and Councillor Smith, both councillors, along with the 7 councillors that represent Plympton wards, were often querying what I was doing about the delays in Plymouth Road. You know, at key times in Plymouth Road, it's gridlocked. We're seeing constant housing development. So Redwood Drive, more homes are being developed at Chadderwood. We've seen Homes England now commit £20 million to the acquisition of Coypool. We've got a joint local plan that's going to deliver the 5,500 homes at Sherford. We've got a housing allocation at Newnham. And we've got our latest proposals from the City Council itself at Saltram in relation to a new crematorium. So delay shouldn't be the order of the day. Delivery by this council, whoever's in charge, is essential. Without the drive and commitment of councillors to make this organisation deliver, we will always be slow in taking up and spending government grant. How can we expect, Lord Mayor, for the government to give resources to Plymouth City Council when we're taking so long to spend that money? Now, we often call on the government to give us more and more resources, but actually local authorities in spending money on highways are quite slow. We need to up our game. The people of Plymouth deserve to have a transport system fit for today, not fit for 20, 30 years ago. We have the resources to implement this scheme. I urge you, Lord Mayor, and the City Council to get behind Councillor Coker and Councillor Lorry in actually spending the money we have and delivering this scheme as quickly as possible. Further delay isn't acceptable. We have no reason to delay further, and I urge members to support this motion.
Councillor Nicholson's motion was seconded by Plympton Earl Councillor Terry Beer, who told the council meeting just what a live issue problems on Plympton's roads were among her ward residents.
My residents fill my inbox on a daily basis with complaints about Plymouth Road, Plympton and Cott Hill. Often as a commuter myself, it can take up an hour to get into Plymouth city centre because of the traffic flow along Plymouth Road. On a good day, say a Sunday morning at 7 o'clock, it takes less than 15 minutes to get into the city centre. At every junction on Plymouth Road, there are delays and hold-ups due to mistimed light changes, and it's quite frustrating, Lord Mayor. The vehicle stacking to turn right off this road is not sufficient, and often the main flow of traffic is held up due to vehicles moving through to turn right and blocking Plymouth Road traffic. This happens all the time and has even happened to me as a Plympton resident. I expect some of the councillors opposite who live in Plympton have experienced similar conditions on occasions. With additional new builds going across Plympton, the roads are going to see increased traffic to the network, and we simply can't cope. Having requested feedback from the consultation regarding the new crematorium to be built at Drake Memorial Park, all residents raised major concerns about traffic at Cott Hill. It is predicted that additional 65,000 vehicle movements will happen as a result of the new crematorium. Residents in Cott Hill suffer daily with excessive pollution from vehicles stacking on the road outside their properties. Residents often complain, and quite rightly so, to not being able to exit their own driveways and have suffered abuse from drivers who are frustrated by the delays at the top of the Cott Hill. My colleague, Councillor Patrick Nicholson, has said consultations took place with residents and proposals discussed to find a way forward to alleviate the issues we face in Plympton. To add to this is a major issue with a weak bridge at Cott Hill, and we haven't even started to have detailed discussions on this, or if such discussions have taken place, it's not been shared with ward councillors. This work needs to be commenced, Lord Mayor, because we cannot cope with the increased vehicle movements on this current infrastructure. The funding is there, is it not? So give us a date and we can prepare our residents and move this project forward with some pace, Lord Mayor. Thank you. Following
the representations from the proposer and seconder to the motion, Finance Portfolio Holder Councillor Mark Lorry entered the debate.
Yes, Lord Mayor. You'll note in the previous agenda item, we looked at the Cap and Toll and Revenue Monitoring Report. And on page 20 of page 24, Councillor Beer, Councillor Patrick Nicholson, you will see in front of you that there is some £3.259 million allocated in the last financial year, the year that you in fact were responsible for. So just to remind you, this report covers April, May and June, okay? 35 days, working days, within that period of time, you were actually still in office. We were, in fact, only in office for 30 days in that period of time. So the money was allocated within this capital programme, I assume by yourselves, and therefore I would suggest you answer your own question, but I suspect Councillor Coker might help you a little bit.
In the third Plympton ward of Chadwellwood, Councillor Glenn Jordan outlined the feedback he had and his own personal experience of travelling into Plympton from his home in Plymstock.
I'm lucky. When I have to come with Plymstock, I can go through the back lanes. I avoid Cott Hill like the plague. I avoid Plymouth Road because the hold-ups on them can be absolutely ridiculous. And I have had no end of complaints from residents who are travelling into the city centre or having to travel over to Plymstock that they can be held up for a considerable amount of time, especially when we've had some of the road schemes that were promoted by the last council, the last time the Labour were in control, Deep Lane Junction, when we found out about the changes 1 minute to midnight before they were just about to start. So we are concerned that we want this project done, and we want it done soon. We have been talking to our residents, we've been raising this, and the money is in the budget, because we've actually got the £2.1 million we have actually got from in transport funding. And later on, we're going to be talking about trying to attract other pots of money in from other potential funders. Why can we go to them and say, yes, we're going to spend your money sensibly, when we've been sitting on £2.1 million worth of transport money on this scheme that should have been spent? So we have done all the consultation. We have been speaking to our residents, and we've done it on 2 occasions now, and this was ready to go. So why are you sitting on it? Why are you slowing it down? Because we need it done, and we need it done as of tomorrow. Thank you.
Next, it was the current portfolio holder with responsibility for roads and infrastructure, Councillor Mark Coker, to respond to the points which had been raised.
Well, where do I start? I'm not sure if this is the start of Councillor Beer's election campaign for next year, but it looks like it to me. When we came to power just a few months ago, the first thing that I did was take all the transport schemes that were in the pipeline to the committee so they could see the proposals, the dates, and where every scheme stood. Let me say, first of all, this scheme, we had, you're right, Councillor Nicholson, you had indicative times for this scheme, but when I sat down for my first cabinet member meeting with officers, I asked the following on these schemes, on every scheme: where are we? What is going on? The answers to Plymouth Road were, we couldn't start yet, Councillor Coker, because we haven't got the Environment Agency's consent to work adjacent to Tory Brook. Why didn't we get that earlier? C4, utilities. We hadn't got the utilities report on what implications that had to the design and the implementation of the scheme. You had no traffic management practices or proposals in place as of the election, and you had no contract in place. So, to say that this administration is responsible to get all of that done within the first few weeks of our new administration, when you had 2 years to progress this scheme. I do take the congratulations, Councillor Nicholson. We did work together over the portfolios to get this funding in place. I will spend this funding, but I can't do it, and I can't implement the scheme until those permissions are given. We are 90% of the way there now. We still have to let the contract, and then the proposed schedules are that works will commence in January 19. Now, I find it really, really strange that you, as the portfolio holder, knew exactly where this scheme sat and what was still outstanding. I can only presume, Lord Mayor, that this is Councillor Beer's re-election campaign, because my inbox is becoming full of issues in Plympton, and even our MP is writing to me on behalf of Councillor Beer now. So I think everyone knows exactly where we're going. But on a serious note, this scheme is important, Councillor Nicholson. I agree with you. We have not, as your motion said, made unnecessary delays. I can stand here with my hand on my heart and say that I have not delayed this scheme. I have picked up where you left off and hadn't completed. This scheme will go ahead and it will be done commencing in January. Lord Mayor, that's all I've got to say, apart from I don't think there's anything else, so I think we should move straight to the vote on this.
Labour succeeded in their bid to cut out further debate on the subject and to proceed straight to a vote on the motion. But before the vote was taken, Councillor Nicholson, as the proposer of the motion, exercised his right to sum up.
I'm disappointed that the corporate plan that has democracy and value at the core of the Labour Council should be just shut down this afternoon. Councillors are here to represent the local community, so it's absolutely right that Councillor Beer and myself and Plympton Councillors speak about this scheme. I welcome the update because it's the first update that I've had since Councillor Coker took office as a Plympton member in relation to the scheme. Obviously, some of it I am taken by surprise because that wasn't certainly the briefing that was supplied by the service director.
Councillor Nicholson, can I just intervene? Councillor Evans, I can't hear the heckling. Please refrain.
So, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So, I'm not going to apologise for not knowing the information that was never told to me at the time that I held the portfolio. But not Lord Mayor, not all junctions. Not all junctions. My Lord Mayor, not all junctions are affected by the Environment Agency's consent. There are junctions that are away from Plymouth Road that are also in the scheme at Glen Road. Traffic management and the placing of the contract, well, much of that, the placing of the contract is delegated to the director, Anthony Payne, and clearly the administration at the time approved this scheme, and the project plan that was approved by myself actually had a start in March, and there was a start on site in March. It's just abruptly stopped as soon as the Labour Party took control, and covers were put on the signs in Colbert, effectively stopping the scheme. And there's been no news since, other than a media release from the council's press office, effectively saying that the scheme is potentially going out for a year. That isn't, Lord Mayor, the way councillors, particularly Labour councillors, should take to delivering vital infrastructure schemes to Plymouth. They criticised in opposition the inability of us to deliver strategic transport schemes in the north of the city because of the impact on the motorist. Yeah, we have an administration that's keen not to spend money they have in the bank, not to address the daily issues that are affecting the motorists in Plympton, and yet come to a council chamber criticising people that did try to deliver the scheme only a few months earlier. I take Councillor Coker at his word that he will deliver the scheme as consulted and as agreed in public consultation with thousands of residents in the Plympton community. And I look forward to the day when Councillor Coker opens the scheme as a completed scheme, delivering the vital infrastructure requirements that Plympton needs. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to the vote on the motion. Please vote using the buttons on your machine. The motion is not passed. Against 28, for 24 and 1 abstention.
So, with councillors voting along party lines, the bid to see an immediate start to the road improvements did not succeed, but from what we heard, the work will finally get underway in January 2019. And that ends this special edition of the Plympton Podcast. Our programme theme music has been provided by audionautics.com.